In this episode, we speak with Dr. Petra Jantzer, Global Life Sciences Lead at Accenture. Petra oversees one of the firm's largest industry groups, spanning work across the entire life sciences value chain. She also leads Accenture services for a major multinational pharmaceutical client, managing a broad portfolio of engagements across R&D, operations, and commercial functions. Petra began her career as a molecular biologist and oncology researcher before moving into consulting. She spent many years at McKinsey working across R&D and corporate strategy, later joining Accenture, where much of her focus centers on how data and intelligent technologies influence scientific processes and business performance. Petra was recognized by the Consulting Report as a top life sciences consultant and leader in 2023, 2024, and 2025. Accenture is a global professional services company operating in more than 120 countries, combining technology capabilities with industry expertise to support clients across sectors. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Petra, thanks so much for taking the time. It's a delight to be with you.
Thank you very much, RJ, for having me. It's a great pleasure.
You have a very long and illustrious background in consulting and within your specific field of life sciences and pharma. Maybe for the benefit of our audience, you can tell us a little bit about your journey in the world of consulting.
Yeah, happy to do so, but I have to warn you, my journey is not anything else than linear. So in my early days, I started off as a scientist doing basic research in the oncology field. I'm a molecular biologist. I have a PhD in tumor immunology, having a couple of patents out of my academic career, and then decided that I did want to move closer to bringing tangible benefits to oncology patients. Thought that I would want to go into industry, but not start again in the lab, which I felt was a bit too manual, and happened to end up in McKinsey, one of the big strategy houses, and stayed there for a very long time because I really liked the learning. I liked the always different challenges. I liked the breadth of topics, that we were dealing with. And then 9 years ago, decided to join Accenture, given on the insight or based on the insight that, technology is not a basic enabler anymore. Technology and data is going to fundamentally change the paradigm of the industry. Now, it's taken a little bit longer than I expected, but I think now is the moment where data and intelligent technologies are fundamentally revolutionizing of how the industry works.
And what type of engagements did you spend the most time on while at McKinsey? Were they more strategy oriented?
Yeah, the business is very, very different. My specialty was R&D and doing strategy work in R&D and corporate strategy. I've done a lot of work in M&A and all sorts of types of strategy work. Now being in Accenture, of course, the work that we do is a very different scale and nature, though we also do very strategic work and also what people would still define as strategy work.
So with your assignments now related to Accenture, is the lead-in or the reason why you're working with a specific client is typically based on a data need or a technology need? Is that correct?
Not necessarily. So typically how we work and at the level that I work. So maybe I quickly introduce the two roles that I have in Accenture. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, I'm leading our life sciences industry, which is a multi-billion business. So it is actually a huge business cutting across all parts of the value chain and bringing together, the multi-service offerings that we have as an organization. The second role that I have is, you could argue, I'm the CEO of our services to a very large client, a top 5 pharmaceuticals company, where I'm responsible again for the entire breadth and portfolio of work that we do. And then my pet topic, if I think about what I do in Accenture, is I'm still have a very sweet tooth for R&D and really investing in what we can do on the biology and in silico biology side to progress science for the benefit of patients.
That's quite a bit under your umbrella. One of the key things, we frequently interview people on this podcast who have grown up within their organizations to higher and higher levels, and the role changes quite a bit. How do you find yourself spending the majority of your time? If it was, this pie of activities that you do, what takes the largest portion of your time?
So the majority of my time is still very, very client oriented. I am a very client and content oriented person. I think that was also the key driver of my entire career. I'm by nature, I think, a curious person, a scientist, and very much driven by learning, getting into new areas, understanding new topics. And that is still what I would say is probably 60% of my work. The other parts are, of course, in a large organization like ours. Accenture is an 800,000 people organization, has to do with, organizing the business, taking care of our people, thinking ahead, our strategy of where we need to invest, new fields, new areas of how we expand the business, always driven by client value proposition. And, of course, with that also comes some administrative tasks. That's unavoidable.
What would you think is the most exciting thing happening in your field today? Yeah, I mean, AI is the buzz. Maybe it's like an aspect of AI relevant to your industry, or perhaps it could be, something even broader than AI.
I think AI, and I hate to say AI and only, it is intelligent technologies. We've been in the industry working with intelligent technologies, machine learning, knowledge graph, a lot of those intelligent tools for a very long time. But generative AI and now agentic AI is clearly in the middle of what's going on in the business. And I speak to a lot of CEOs, also at the top of mind of CEOs. I think the approach, though, that I see also many of our competitors take and many of our clients take is being very use case driven. We have a use case in clinical, we have a use case in marketing, we have a use case on customer engagement in manufacturing. And people think about AI as a tool that you actually inject at a point somewhere in the value chain to drive at that immediate point some efficiencies. It's mostly efficiency driven. Now, where we come in and, what I'm very excited about is that we take a much more holistic approach. Entering or throwing a piece of technology in existing processes today will not get scale benefit. And there's just been a study published of the MIT, which is saying there's no ROI on AI. But the problem actually is that using AI at scale requires a fundamental rethinking of processes, how the work is being done. It requires fundamentally addressing, skills and capabilities of people. It requires a fundamental readdressing of your workforce composition, if you think about humans plus agents. And it has to take into account your technology makeup. We call this the digital core. But not only actually your technology foundation, but also your partnerships that you have, with hyperscalers, with small specialized companies. And that is what I find extremely fascinating, this holistic end-to-end approach to say we need to change the fundamental model. We do not need to use only technology. It's a very different way of working.
I'm curious, you touched on how M&A was part of the work you did at McKinsey. I'm curious as to how you work in M&A potentially at Accenture. It still seems to be a driver to the growth of some of these large pharma companies. There's always this consistent evaluation of target opportunities. Do you still spend a decent amount of time in M&A?
It's one topic, not at the core of what I do personally, but of course, what we're seeing right now is M&A. I mean, there were the times where we had these like big consolidations, these big mergers. I don't think that is what's at the horizon for us right now. There's a lot more investments into platform technologies, into specific capabilities, into biologics platforms. And right now in the industry, with the growth challenge that we are seeing, a lot of companies are, of course, also buying later stage, mid to later stage pipeline to just keep the growth fueled.
I'd like to switch gears for a moment and learn a little bit more about you as a person. Did you grow up always interested in the sciences?
No, my parents are actually engineers, but they were very result open and very little guiding in the sense of what they thought, would be my professional future, and always gave me the view that, there is no limits to what I can actually achieve.
Hmm.
And that was, I would say, something fundamentally in me to explore a lot of things. When I finished high school, I was actually torn between becoming a molecular biologist or actually going into politics or journalism
Hmm.
and publicistic. And it was a very close call, but then somehow instinctively decided for science and ended up in science.
Hmm. And you grew up in Switzerland?
I grew up in Germany.
Oh, in Germany.
I did my school and my university education in Germany and the US, and then happened to meet my husband, who is a physician located in Switzerland. And so I moved to Switzerland quite a few years back. But the reality is, I'm at home everywhere. I have an apartment and a husband and two sons in Zurich, but I still travel a huge amount across the world.
Now, heading back into consulting, is there a good example of a client you have worked with where you really found that your advice or the work you did, the services you performed really positively impacted that client?
Look, I think there are many, many examples, and I can't go obviously into specific details.
Hmm.
But typically, what we do really is transformative engagements at a very large scale. Often they have a significant technology component. But I would say two more recent examples that I'm really proud of is in an area in the life sciences industry, drugs that are currently in very high demand with very, very severe production capacity issues, working with one of these clients on thinking through a very accelerated path of how to create more production capacity, leveraging a lot of these intelligent technologies, tools, digital twins, to really make sure they can gear up the capacity to provide sort of these drugs to patients in needs. Another example that I'm very proud of is we've worked with a mid-sized company in helping them identify completely new drug targets. They're active in the area of pain, and they were brave enough to partner with us to sort of really explore. And that was at the beginning of AI. What can be done with AI in this very important field? And it was amazing in how short amount of a time we were able to identify together new targets that are now actually in the way to the clinic. Of course, we need to see, will it all work or not work? But just really revolutionizing the amount of time and the amount of money it takes to come up with completely new biology was extremely exciting.
To this topic of you having quite a bit of responsibility under your umbrella, have you found that you've needed to adjust or learn a new leadership style as you progressed, or was it all kind of intuitive? You assumed the new role and you kind of made some changes in how you kind of went about your work. I assume there's a lot of visibility on you given you're the leader of, your department, so to speak.
Absolutely. Look, I think for me, and of course, it's been a learning path. And even in my time at McKinsey, every other year, your role changes from managing yourself to managing a small team to managing a team and a client to managing an entire account, and then into Accenture managing a big business with tens of thousands of people. But that was also part of the fun, exploring that path and sort of really observing myself how I can also develop further. Now, I would say there's a couple of things. My leadership mantra and what I tell also my younger colleagues is first and foremost, focus on client value. focus on what is absolutely important and at the center of the agenda of your client, and find or define a value proposition around it. And that requires, an ability to read clients. As a consultant, you are never the one in the front. You have to be able to step back with your ego and really understand what is important. At the core of my leadership principles, I think I'm a very inclusive and democratic leader to some extent. I do embrace the value of teams. Teams are very powerful. So I believe in making sure everybody is being heard, everybody can contribute. But I also look at my role as a leader to come to a conclusion and be target oriented. So it's always the yin and yang of being inclusive and empowering, but also not shying away from taking a decision, even if it's a very uncomfortable decision. And then the third thing that I would say, all of these years in my career, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Sometimes things feel very scary and you feel like, oh my God, I'm a scientist. And then I became a consultant, and then I became a leader in a large, multi-service tech organization, not understanding anything of tech. But stepping out of the comfort zone, making an effort to learn, staying current has proven to be, I think, quite helpful.
With an organization of 800,000 people in Accenture across the globe, is there a cohesive culture that you feel, or is it more divided, like each department or sector grouping has its own culture?
I think there is a base culture which is centered around some of the values that I pointed out. Client value proposition is absolutely key. Accenture, for the size of its organization, actually, when I joined 9 years back, it was 340,000 people. Now it's 800,000 people. The organization has changed focus, where to invest, what is actually our identity multiple times, even in those 9 years. So I would say there is a base culture of learning, being very agile, pivoting very quickly despite the size into new areas. And again, in this client focus, also embracing change and accepting risks and managing the risks as they go. So I think that is the base culture. Now, within my life sciences team, I do think I had the advantage coming from outside and not being like Accenture blind. And I joined Accenture at the time because it's an organization that brings so many things together, strategy and consulting with very, very deep domain understanding, and technology business, which is base technologies, but also very innovative technologies. We have a huge agency business, Accenture Song, and we are one of the biggest providers of digital services and content in the world. We have an outsourcing business, and we have an Industry X business where we do a lot of digitization of industries. And coming in, for me, the beauty of all of this was having such a broad toolbox that allows you to create a very different and unique value proposition, even vis-a-vis, a top strategy house, and I love my McKinsey roots. I'm very proud of it. But what we can do as an organization with that depth in all of these areas, bringing this together around a purpose of doing something for patients and creating, the highway, if you wish, to advancements in medicine. I think that's the culture that really is very, very guiding for the life sciences team.
We're coming up on time, and I have two final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Well, I cannot name the person, but certainly in my McKinsey upbringings, remember, I was a scientist in the lab, and 5 years later, I was a partner. There were actually two gentlemen who embodied this type of leadership, sort of creating space, encouraging, stepping out of the comfort zone, helping create opportunities with very, very senior leaders, having that trust and teaching me what empowerment can do, how much value you can unlock, how much you can unlock from a person through empowerment and trust and enablement. And I really do think that has helped me a lot, becoming the leader that I am myself, but also in progressing my careers, being brave enough actually to always take these steps into something very unknown and give it a try and wrestle it down.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yes, very happy to do so. So in all my career, being a scientist, being a McKinsey partner, being a very senior leader in Accenture, I have very often been the first woman in any comparable position. On top of that, I was brave enough to also have 2 children, which is very, very rare. And I live in a country which is very rich, highly developed, but has a very traditional societal model. So I've been, over many years, extremely engaged in promoting women in leadership positions, not for the sake of women, but because I strongly believe that diversity, different opinions, different views create a better outcome. And there is a lot of science around this as well. So I've been very engaged in creating an industry association in Switzerland of companies with that joint course where we are exchanging best practices, where we've become a voice, in the political voice in Switzerland to promote diversity in leadership positions. And I'm now adding to that because I think all of this needs to start in schools. We need to encourage girls. We need to encourage young women to go into MINT subjects, to go into maths, to embrace science. And so I'm also adding to my list, actually, being very engaged in education.
Wonderful. Petra, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.